Okay, so a while ago, quite a while ago by now, I've tried to make a video about the different types of super units and what the differences between them are, and especially the crab, and why the crab was so bad. But I kinda never finished making that video, and by now they also released a new update that changed how some of that stuff works. Especially they changed the crabs so that they're actually a good unit now. And so it would be kinda outdated and wrong, but I thought might as well release the stuff I had made, so it's not completely wasted, I guess. So yeah, here we go. Unfinished video. Okay, today we make a little bit of an analysis about super units. And we will start with the giant right here, because the giant is pretty much the standard super unit that all the normal tribes use. You can get a giant and also every other super unit by upgrading a city to level 5 and then choosing to make a giant instead of a Park of Fortune. Now the giant is characterized by the fact pretty much that he has very high HP, very high attack, and very high defense, which is all very dangerous. Luckily, or unfortunately, depending on whose side you are, it also has barely any movement or rage, and doesn't have dash, which makes it even it makes it just very immobile, especially not having dash. And it doesn't even have fortify, so it doesn't get a defense bonus from cities. I think the developers thought that the giant has already enough defense and doesn't need anymore. It can still get defense bonus from like forest or mountains. Generally, the giant is considered a very strong unit, and it's often used to siege other cities because of its high attack. It can easily kill most units that may be defending that city. And if it sieges, then it's very hard to kill because it has such a high HP. It's tough to bring that down. And it also has a very high defense, like I already told. So most units that will attempt to attack it will die in the process, or at least get very weakened. Now, an exception to this is, of course, ranged units, because it can't give any retaliation to units that attack from one space away or maybe even further away. So units that can do that are like a natural weakness to giants. Mind benders are also somewhat of a weakness because the giant doesn't have dash. So if it ends up in front of a mind bender, then it can get easily mind bended. And also for the opponent, that is a pretty huge win because a giant is a very powerful and rare unit. You can also use the giant to unsiege your own cities. Like if you're an enemy opponent, like for example, we pretend this warrior would be an enemy, would be sieging our capital here, and we would upgrade the city to level 5 or higher. Then we could create a new giant that would push the invader out of the city and also defend it afterwards because, again, a giant is very hard to kill. I think that was pretty much all the standard stuff about giants. They are strong against other singular units, especially because they have the best stats, simply. They are weak to mind benders, so you can be careful about mind benders. And ranged units like boats, archers, or catapults. If you have many units as opponents, then it can also be dangerous for the giant. But at least you can assume that he will take a lot of the enemies with him purely to the retaliation damage. But what is actually a little bit special about the giant is that you can also use him very much as a battleship. Now that seems very common because giants are the most common super unit. But all the other super units actually struggle with doing that. But we'll come back to that later when we are with those units. Now, the battleship has different reasons, let's call it that. Now, as you may can see, the attack actually goes down from 5 to 4, and the defense goes also down from 4 to 3, so it has less strong stats as a giant would have on land, but it has range now, and it can go over water, and it is still one of the strongest units, probably even stronger than the giant, also because it has dash and scout now, and it's the strongest battleship you can get, because like all the other battleships have like 10 or 15 HP. Sometimes you can get some with 20 HP, but that's also rather rare. And you can obviously see that a battleship can survive longer if it has up to 4 times the amount of life points. And if it stays longer alive, then it can, for a longer time, deal damage back. So that's obviously very good, and it also counters a bit that the giant is so slow on land, because a giant, a battleship has quite a lot of range, and it also has it has a lot of movement, it has a lot of range, and it has dash. So basically the opposite from the movement abilities of the giant, while it still keeps a decently strong amount of attack and defense, and the HP gets just translated. You can also use roads to counter the movement a little bit of the giants, to make it a little bit faster on land. But that's pretty much just to get you faster into enemy territory and to let you attack quicker. Which, what I also want to mention, which I kind of forgot before, is when you use the giant to push out a unit out of your city by creating a new giant in a city that is sieged at the moment, and you put other units all around your city so that the unit that is sieging you has no place to get pushed to, then that unit will just disappear. And that can also be a very good strategy, especially if you get sieged by a giant. Then you can just push out a new giant while the city is surrounded by units, or maybe also water, or maybe mountains if the opponent doesn't have climbing yet. And then you will get rid of the other unit simultaneously. I think that is a fair description of the giant so far, and now it's time to look at the other super units. Okay, next we look at the crabs, and as you may or may not know, I am of the opinion that the crab is by far the worst super unit. Now, let's look at why that is. First of all, the stats look very similar to a giant. If you look close, you'll see that the attack of the crab is only 4 instead of 5. But instead it has 2 abilities, escape and float. So you think that maybe it's balanced out, but I really think it's not balanced out. So let's look at why that is. Let's at first look here at how the less attack affects the crab. If we see that the crab attacks a giant, then the crab gets hurt from the retaliation just as much as the giant himself. Like, the giant can just walk around and actively keep himself from healing, because if he would just stand around, he would actually heal and have more HP than the crab. But even if he literally just walks around doing nothing, the crab kills itself just as much as the giant. Now, to be granted, the crab always would attack first in this scenario, so it would get the kill, but this is assuming that the giant plays as stupidly as possible. I mean, if the giant just decides, hey, how about I fight back, then suddenly the crab has way less HP than the giant. So that's already looking pretty bad. But giant versus crab is, let's say, it's kind of rare to happen. So let's look what this attack does against other units. If we attack, for example, a defended defender, or like a defender with defense bonus to make it sound less silly, then we can see that the crab can bring it down with one attack to 7 HP. The giant, on the other hand, the giant can't kill it either, but the giant can at least bring it down to 3 HP. And you may think that doesn't make that much of a difference, but I actually think it does, because like the 3 HP defender, it's pretty much dead. Like a warrior or a rider or something like that can easily kill it, while a 7 HP defender may still can put some effort in to actually siege. And this effect gets even stronger if it's a vault defender, not just one with the normal defense bonus. Here we can see the crab leaves the defender with 10 HP, so it manages to just get like a third of the defender, while the giant at least brings it down to 8. Well, to be honest, maybe what I just said wasn't that true. There's actually not that much of a difference here. But where you definitely can see a difference is that a normal giant is able to kill a knight or Tridentian here. A Tridentian has the same stats as a knight, except that it has only 3 attack and only 2 movement, but life and defense are the same as a knight. So this is basically the same as attacking a knight. And you can see the giant can just one-shot the knight, even if it's in a city defense bonus, while the crab is unable to kill a giant, to kill a knight, even if it's outside of defense bonus. And so you can see, like, there are definitely situations where this is quite harmful. It's more difficult to kill knights, it's more difficult to kill defenders. Yeah, it's more difficult to kill other giants. I mean, the crab is still a powerful unit, because 4 attack is still a lot, but it's definitely a disadvantage to the other super units. So let's look at the positives. I mean, the crab has still the escape and the float ability, and I mean, the last attack was bad, but it wasn't like that bad, so maybe it still has a chance to balance it out with its abilities. So let's look at that. We look at first at the float ability here. And what most of you probably don't know is that the float ability doesn't even quite work on its own. Like, we can walk here, but if we try to walk on this dark square here, it simply doesn't work. We can go a little bit more around, and we see indeed the crab is unable to go on the deep water. It can walk fine on the shallow water, which, I mean, a normal giant also couldn't, but it's unable to do walk on the deep water. Now you may be confused. You've maybe played with crabs before and you just went over the dark squares, the deep sea, and had no problems. The thing is, you can walk on the deep blue, on the deep sea, if you have either free diving or navigation. And if you play with aquarium, you almost always get free diving before you get your first crab. So you usually don't even get the problem that you can move on the dark squares, and maybe don't even know it, but I think it's still worth mentioning. Let's go with navigation here. And as you can see, now we can just walk on the dark squares like normally. But let's look a little bit further. The float ability has one big disadvantage, and that is because you float, you can't get the crab in a battleship anymore. And that actually is pretty bad. Now let's look at it. Why is it so much worse to just walk over the water than be in a ship or battleship? Well, first of all, the crab can only move like one square every time, while a boat can move 2 squares and a ship or battleship even 3 squares. So we already see that the crab will be much slower in the traveling, and the oceans are oftentimes like vast, pretty empty places. I mean, there are ships and all of that, but there's usually still a lot of place that you just go through and can't really do much. And with boats, that's not that much of a problem. I mean, they pretty easy all get 3 movement, which in of itself like already shows how much movement needed is needed on the water, because like on land barely anything can move like 3 squares, only knights can. And in the water, it's just normal. I mean, granted, on land you can use roads, but still. Now, the problem with being slower, first and foremost, like until you reach the other side of the ocean or a lake or whatever it is, oftentimes you just moved with your Tridentians over already, because the Tridentians are like double the speed on the water, or on the water the Tridentians just move double as fast, if not even faster, because they can even rebound. And you usually kind of already overwhelm the coast with Tridentians, and when your crab reaches the other side of the lake, it's usually the fight is already over. So that in of itself is already bad. But the stats are also pretty bad. I mean, if we look at a battleship, then we see, okay, it has 4 attack. The crab has also only 4 attack, because it's the debuff. Like for a normal giant, the lesser attack would be a debuff, but for a crab, it's like it wouldn't even make a difference. Now, the defense of a battleship is only 3, and that of the crab is actually 4. So you think that, okay, at least the crab has more defense, but that doesn't actually matter all that much, because the crab has only 1 movement and 1 range, and not even dash, while a battleship has all of that. It has dash, it has 3 movement, it has 2 range. So like the battleship can simply go 1 tile away and then shoot the crab without getting any retaliation damage. And the crab can't even reach the ship, because it has only 1 movement and no dash. So it would literally have a battleship or a normal ship come directly in front of it and then stay there, because if the battleship would only move 1 tile away every time, and remember, it could move up to 3 tiles away, then the crab has never a chance to actually attack it. Now, granted, if a crab would somehow get a hold of a 10 HP battleship, it could actually one-shot it. But if we have a 15 HP boat, even if it's just a boat, the crab simply won't be able to kill it anymore. I mean, we have a crab and it can't defeat a freaking boat just because it has 15 HP. And on the other hand, like the boat, it can't hurt the crab much, but it can just cruise around and annoy the crab with its arrows over and over again, and the crab can't really do anything against it, because the boat has range and dash, and the crab is just kind of helpless against that. And we should also remember that we are comparing the crab just to normal ships and battleships right now. Like, we should actually rather compare it to a giant battleship, which is the strongest battleships of them all, because that is what the crab cannot become, because it has the float ability. So we can already see you might as well take the float ability rather as a disadvantage than an advantage. And with that speaking, it's not really good to balance out the lesser HP. It's like saying, hey, we gave you a disadvantage, and to balance it out, we give you even more disadvantages. That kind of doesn't really fit right. But let's look further. We also have the escape ability. Now, the escape ability doesn't really have disadvantages. Like if you don't want to move again after attacking, then you just don't do it. But the advantages that you get out of it aren't all that great either. Now, how I think this is planned is like you get to the enemy coast and then attack the unit there and bounce back and flee into the water, and the enemies can't reach you anymore. And you can attack over and over again and are basically out of reach of the enemy, and the enemy has a big problem. But the thing is, this simply doesn't work. Let's look at that. Let's look at that. You try to attack the coast, but like the worst thing is like when you want, let's say, to attack the Shrider here or anything like that. First of all, you gotta get to the coast. So you go here. Then you can't attack because you have no dash. This means the enemy can, with all the units that it has here, just attack you. We make it just with one for demonstration. Then it's your turn again. And you can finally attack. Now, even though it's a crab, it's still a super unit, so in most cases you will be able to get the kill here. And then you can bounce back. But you can only bounce back one tile. So you go back here, and guess what? You're getting attacked again. And now it's your turn. And you can see, I could go back here. But what do I do then? I killed one unit, I got attacked 2 times with how many riders were close by. And I just killed 1 unit and now I'm back here. And if I want to attack again, I have to go back and get attacked 2 times again. I could also stay back here and here, but I got literally just attacked by 2 riders now. I would have to heal 2 turns, 2 turns wasted. And that is if I go back directly in my borders, because in your city borders you can heal 4 HP, and outside of your city borders you can only heal 2 HP, so if there wouldn't be a city right next to me of my own, then I would have to heal 3 turns just to kill 1 unit. I mean, that's not good. I could, of course, also decide to, like, I attack here and go back, and the riders can attack me all they want, and then I see, it won't really make sense to go back because I would just waste my time healing, and I've literally just killed 1 unit. So maybe I just stay on the front line and attack the next rider and go back again. But then you continuously stay at a point where the opponents can attack you. Like, what's the point even then? You don't go back to a safe place, and you might just as well just stay here on land because you get damaged all the same. Now you might be wondering, okay, but what if I don't kill the unit there? I mean, if there is a giant or like a knight, then it's like, okay, I can attack them and rebound into safety, but like, even if I attack the knight, I go into the frontier, and then I get attacked by the riders. And then, sure, I can attack the knight and rebound into safety. But I got attacked by the riders for literally just damaging a knight and not even killing it. And it's like, is it really worth it to let all the riders to get like my knight get in an attack range of all the riders just to damage and not even kill a knight? And then if I want to attack again, I literally have to move again back into the zone where all the riders can attack me just again. That's not good. Like here, I want to finish the night off, and again I get hit 2 times by the riders. It's just not really helpful. And if I want to fight the giant, I again even have the problem that I damage myself just as much. Now I was damaged before, like I had 30 HP and the giant was full health. So I hurt myself even more than I hurt the giant. Like, I hurt the giant 8 HP and myself 10. So that's pretty bad. Now, what you might say is, okay, attacking on the coast is maybe not so good, but if I fight on land against a giant, maybe I can continuously back up, and then only I'm the one who's attacking. And let's look at. Now here we can use the crab and attack the giant and then back up. And now the giant can try to attack us, but we're out of reach and he has no dash, so he just follows us. And then the crab can attack again and again back up. And now, besides the point that we have basically the situation that I showed with the attack in the first place, that we hurt ourselves just as much. I mean, we would still get the finishing blow. But the bigger problem is, like, the giant just followed us out of his own free will. He doesn't have to do that. If he just decides, hey, I can't quite get the crab anyways if I follow it, how about I just stay here and heal? And then you have a big problem. Yeah, because then you're the one who's unable to attack the giant, and additionally, the giant even has more HP than you now. Now, if you want to attack it, you're the one who has to go back into the front line of the giant. And now the giant can attack you, and the giant has more attacks than you. So that's pretty bad for you. And so, like, it just doesn't look too good. I mean, it doesn't really have disadvantages to have the escape possibility, but like the things you're supposed to do with it just don't really work. So it's in most cases just kind of useless. I mean, it still has advantages, and I will talk about that actually a little bit more now, because even though how much I love to roast the poor crab, I have to be fair and say those abilities are not entirely useless. They actually have some pretty important advantages. Let's first talk about the float ability. Now, it's actually quite important that the crab has the float ability, and it's a really good thing. Now you wonder, hey, but didn't you just explain to us that the float ability is bad and and keeps us from making giant battleships or crab battleships, which it would be in this case? And that is true. But one thing that is like really important about this is that you can move on the water without the need of a port. And usually, like, that wouldn't be that much of an advantage, because like if you go on water, you usually make ports anyways, and it doesn't bring that much. But the thing is, for Aquarion, it's very important, because Aquarion doesn't go for ports. Aquarion goes for tridents. And if you go for tridents and attack over the water with them, you simply don't need ports, so you don't build them. And if you then would get a normal giant without the float ability and are kind of stuck on an island, then you wouldn't be able to use the giant at all without having to extra build ports that you wouldn't need otherwise. So, even though float can suck very much, it's still good to have it for Aquarion. In like all other tribes, it's better to not have float, but for Aquarion, it's actually a good thing. And another thing that's good about the ability to float is that you can easier get on land. Like, especially if you're trying to siege a city. Like, let's pretend there would be a city here now. Like, if it were a normal giant in a battleship, or maybe even a normal ship, and you want to siege with the giant, then you at first have to make sure that you have an empty space here. So you would have to use your other ships to use to make the space clear, and then land there with your giant, and can't really do anything with the giant anymore for this turn. While the crab could kill the unit that is potentially there, and the other ships can concentrate on other units. Now, does this balance out, that we can easier go on land, that we don't get battleships? I would say no, because battleships are simply better at attacking, and even if we take into account that giant has more defense, which actually could be useful if you're standing on the coast, in comparison to having a battleship on the coast, because if you're on the coast, you're probably getting attacked by units that don't have range, instead of like the boats on the water, which I explained that the extra defense for the crab isn't actually all that useful. But on the coast, this could also be useful, but still you need to get closer with the crab to even attack in the first place. And a battleship would be better, but for the one reason that Aquarion doesn't build ports, it's actually a good thing that the crab has a float ability, because otherwise they would way too often just get stuck, especially with Aquarion, who even likes usually to go on very watery maps. And for this tribe specific, that's a good thing. And now if we talk about the escape ability, that actually has also a few good advantages. For one, if you come to happen to a city that is empty, but has another unit next to it, then you are able to kill that unit with the crab and then move into the city, instead of just moving into the city and leaving the unit alive. Now that you come into a situation where that happens is like very rare. I mean, it can happen if you have like other units around that were able to kill the unit in the city, but just don't have the reach to attack the other unit as well. Then it can be useful where you can say, okay, now I get to kill this unit as well and can still siege the city. Now, honestly, it's a very rare situation, and even if you would come across it with a normal giant, then it leaving a single warrior or rider or something like that alive usually won't make that much of a difference. If you siege with a giant, I mean, it theoretically could make the difference between unsieging or not unsieging, but that situation is even more rare. So it's like a very situational advantage, but I guess it's there. What you also have as an advantage, though, which actually happens more often, is that if you have like a weak unit that you can kill, or I suppose, yeah, in this case it would have to be one you can kill, that then you can kill this unit and move another tile, and there through this escape option, you were basically able to move 2 tiles, while a giant is only able to move 1 tile. So in certain situations, you can move a little bit quicker across the map. It can be useful, and it happens from time to time. Like, it's not that rare than the other thing, but it's still just mildly useful. So I mean, again, at least it's there, but at least it's there. Now, the last advantage that you also get through the escape ability is that you are more safe from mindbenders. Like, if you kill a unit and there's a mindbender behind it, then the normal giant would simply be screwed. But the crab can kill a unit next to a mindbender and then simply move away and don't get mindbended. So that can be useful. I mean, you can still end up getting mindbended if you move to the fork to explore a little bit, and then this turns out, ooh, dang, there was a mindbender in the fork and I don't have dash, so I'm still screwed and get mindbended. But at least you have a little bit more protection against mindbenders. Now, honestly, in like a real player-to-player match, you rarely use mindbenders, but at least you know that should it come to the situation, you are a little bit more safe with the crab. Now, with these actual advantages that I all explained now, do I think that the crab maybe deserves to be treated better and is actually a good unit? Well, no, I think it still sucks. I mean, there are some situational advantage. There are some situational advantages, but like overall, there are still more disadvantages than advantages, and it just doesn't balance out at all. And the crab simply sucks and deserves to be roasted. But hey, maybe we can look at another super units, and those will hopefully stand a little bit better than the crab. Next, we talk about dragons. In my opinion, the strangest super units. A lot of you would probably disagree and say that centipedes are even stranger, but in my opinion, dragons are even more an outliner when comparing them to traditional giants. Now, dragons start as a dragon egg, which has 10 HP, 0 attack, 2 defense, 1 movement, and 1 range. So basically a warrior, but without attack, which is for a super unit very bad. But I think we can all agree that the point of the dragon egg is pretty much being a nuisance anyways, just to counteract the strength of the fire dragon. Now, it can grow into something else in a few turns. It has Fortify, which is actually very rare for giant units. Like, normal giants don't have that. And overall, I think we can all agree it's a bad unit as an egg. This is actually quite important, not only for it being a nuisance for few turns, but also it keeps you from uh, pushing enemies out of your city by creating a giant, because you would only get an egg if you do that, and an egg won't hold the enemies off for long, so it's basically not even worth it to try it. But what the egg very interesting has is that it can go into ports. Most special super units can't do that, or at least have struggled to do so. Here is it is pretty much the same case. Like you can do it as a dragon egg, but it won't work like that anymore if you have a baby dragon, but we'll look at that later. Now, in terms of making a giant battleship, the egg is obviously not the best choice, because it has only 10 HP, and a 10 HP unit is not really all that strong in a boat. Like, you could just put a warrior in there and have pretty much the same result. But you can use this as protection. Like if it's out here, it's kind of hard to reach for enemy units, and it also now actually has attack and potentially more defense than it usually would have if you would put it in a battleship. So a battleship is a little bit expensive, so you may want to stop after making a normal ship. But it's still quite interesting. What is also very interesting is that it won't upgrade into a baby dragon as long as it is in the boat. Yeah, we can't even look at the grow thing, but it should theoretically only take a few turns to upgrade into a baby dragon, and it didn't happen so far. I'm also sorry about having to play a little bit, but we have here a bot as enemy basically, and I just don't want to accidentally die. But yeah, as you can see, it doesn't turn into a baby dragon. But if we go on land, then it has remembered that it had its turns and now is a baby dragon. As we can see, the baby dragon has 15 health, so that's already an upgrade to the baby egg. Also, if the egg got damaged, to my knowledge, it would have healed in the transformation. But of course, you gotta be careful that it doesn't get killed in the process. So yeah, you should still try to avoid your dragon egg getting hit. It still has a grow ability, because it still becomes a fire dragon. It has a dash ability, which is rather unique for a giant or a super unit. It has a escape ability, which is even more unique for, well, I wouldn't say it's even more unique, but it's also rather unique. And in contrast to the crab, it has 2 movement, so the escape is actually useful. It has a scout with double vision that can be very useful, because with the combined with the fly ability, which just lets you go over any terrain like mountains or water, it can give you an easy early exploration. And it also has 2 movement, so you could explore the map quite fast with dragons. On the other hand, you don't know what enemies are potentially in the unexplored areas, so it's also very risky, because like it has 15 health and 3 in defense. That is the same as defender or swordsman, so that's actually a quite good defense. But for a super unit, it's still pretty vulnerable, and it's quite a valuable unit, so you don't want to really lose them. I would also like to mention that, at least to my knowledge, um, through the fly ability, which is definitely a useful ability, you can't use roads anymore. Yes, as we can see here. And also the dragon, as I demonstrate real quick, can't go in ports anymore because it just flies over it. So that are a little bit of downsides on the baby dragon, like actual downsides. All in all, I would say it is already a useful unit, but for a giant, it's still rather weak, because it has only 3 attack, which is actually 2 less than a normal giant, and 3 defense, which is also less defense than a normal giant. And let's be honest, 15 HP are nice for normal units, but for a giant, that's pretty much nothing. So it's very vulnerable, and isn't that great of an attacker, and it still has to go near enemy units to attack them. And in contrast to normal giants, it doesn't necessarily kill them anymore, because it has less attack, so there are way more situations where the enemy is able to survive and give retaliation damage. So it is a good unit, but not for a giant unit in comparison. Okay. I played a little so that the enemy won't hurt us anymore, and the dragon should evolve rather now. And now we have the fire dragon. I would say the fire dragon is pretty much the definition of a glass cannon. It still has only 20 health. I mean, it's a little bit more, and I guess it can heal when growing up. But it's still only half of a normal giant, so it's rather bad health. It has 4 attack, which is the same as like a crab, but still less than a normal giant. It has still only 3 defense, but it now has 3 movement and 2 range. That means it can fly very, very far and basically snipe enemies, because it has only additionally 2 range, so it theoretically could attack an opponent that is 5 tiles away. Like no other unit would be able to do that. It still has the scout ability, so it's still a great explorer, and it also has the fly ability, where it can just travel over water and mountains and anything. And with a movement of 3 now, it's like really a great explorer. But again, it's a unit that can still die pretty easily. 20 health and 3 defense. I mean, it can tank a little bit, but compared to other giants, it dies very easily. It lost the escape ability, so it actually has ability not anymore that it had in the past, but in exchange it got the splash ability, which can also be quite terrifying. And I would say the dragon is pretty strong against groups of enemies, especially weak ones, because of its splash ability. And also it is very mobile. So I would say it's generally pretty much the opposite of a normal giant. Like a normal giant is very tanky and very very unable of movement, and it is good against single enemies, but weak against masses of enemies, while the dragon is especially good against masses of enemies, especially weak ones. But struggles in tanking, like if you want to siege a city, the dragon is much easier killed. Now with on the water, like I said, or not like I said, but like the baby dragon, the fire dragon also can't go into boats, and therefore can't make a battleship. I would say the dragon can actually fight rather well against battleships. It has 20 health, so it is slightly above health of a standard battleship, but still below of a giant battleship, of course. It has the same attack power and the same defense. So against a normal battleship, I would say it pretty much has the same power, but the dragon is of course much more valuable than like a standard battleship. So I would still try to avoid the fight. And a battleship is one of the few units that can actually still get counter damage because the fire dragon has range now and can attack from afar. So battleships, even though the dragon is around the same strength, are, in my opinion, one of the worst enemies that a dragon can have. Now, Illyrian also has navalons, or however they are called. Now, I forgot to ask Polycat to also make navalons for me, but we can still look at them here. Navalons have, contrary to the dragon, actually stats that are pretty similar to a usual giant. 30 health is quite a lot. It has also 4 attack and 4 defense, so it has all the tankiness that we know from giants. And also the way that navalons are produced kind of reminds on giants. At least it's more like giants than like usual units like knights or warriors, because you can only get them uh, by transforming whales into the navalons, and therefore have only limited access to them, much like the giants, which you can only get by upgrading your cities. And I think it's fair to say that the navalons are pretty much a second super unit form for Illyrian. Now, the navalons have a few disadvantages, like they are only able to go on water or cities that are directly on the coast. They have the persist ability, which allows them to kill other units as long as they are able to manage a kill. Now, those other units will usually be ships because it can only be on water. And here it has a similar problem, let's call it that, as crabs, which is being that it only has 4 attack. So while it can kill 10 HP battleships, which is quite good, especially in the early game, it's unable to make a finishing blow on even 15 HP boats. And that's obviously quite bad for the Navalon, because that ends its ability to use persist and kill even more units. Also, it has only 1 range, which gives them a disadvantage towards battleships which have 2 range and therefore can attack the Navalon without having to fear getting counter damage from the Navalon. But at least it has 3 movement, so it can keep up with the battleships and ships with its speed. And also it can team up with the dragon quite nicely, because the dragon has splash damage and could weaken multiple battleships at the same time, allowing the naval to attack and kill multiple stronger ships as well. And also, if it sieges a coastal city, then it is quite hard to kill, because it has the tankiness of a giant. And I think it's fair that we talk about this unit as well. But let's go back to the fire dragon real quick. Now, we will look at the dragon at a few situations. If it were against mindbenders, then I think the dragon has very good chances of not getting mindbended, because the scout ability, for one, allows him to see the mindbender easier, so it's harder for the mindbender to hide in the fog. Secondary, the dragon has the dash ability, which allows him to, should he move in the fog and get surprised by mindbender, attack and kill the mindbender anyways. And even if there were two mindbenders hiding in the fog, the splash ability would at least damage very much the second mindbender, and make it easier for like a nearby rider to take care of it. The baby dragon is even more safe for mindbenders, because it has escape ability and can, whenever it gets next to a mindbender, just attack it and bounce back again. The only real way it could get mindbended is if it rebounces into the fog and gets surprised by a mindbender. But since I think the baby dragon had the scout ability as well, this is very unlikely. Now, the dragon egg would theoretically be very vulnerable to mindbenders, but you really shouldn't send baby eggs to the front lines anyways. Dragon eggs, I mean. So it rarely should come in the situation where it's attacked by mindbenders anyways. Now, if the dragon would fight against other super units, it pretty much would always win, because of its higher mobility and its range. Like, if it were to fight against a normal giant, it could just always keep one tile away and then attack with its fire attack, which has range and dash, and the giant could never reach it. The same, of course, for the crab. Now, the centipede could theoretically give the dragon a little bit of a problem, because it also has higher movement, especially if it's got a boost from a shaman. And it also has a dash ability, but I think with range ability, like with having range and higher movement after it kills the shaman, the fire dragon should be able to outmaneuver the centipede and win in the end. The only other super unit that really could create some sort of stalemate would be Gami, because if the fire dragon would try to attack Ngami, the Gami could simply walk up towards the fire dragon and freeze it forever. But the dragon should have no problem just running away if it really comes to it with its 3 movement. So you could say if it's super unit to super unit fight, then the dragon would always win, or pretty much always. But in the overall, it's not that easy. Now we can all agree, I think, that like from the stats wise, the fire dragon is rather weak for a super unit, but it has very much flexibility that allows it to outmaneuver its enemies and make it potentially stronger than other super units. I say potentially because I'm of the opinion it very much depends on how you play. You have to be very careful with the dragon because of its rather weak stats. It can very easily die, and if you're not careful, then it's kind of just a waste. So I think the fire dragon has the potential to be stronger than other super units, but it's always a little bit risky and you have to play very cautious when you play with them. Also, the fire dragon first has to develop out of the egg and the baby dragon. And I think we can all agree that the egg and the baby dragon simply are weaker than super units. There's just no doubt about it in my mind. So you also have to wait for quite a bit. It's not as good in sieging cities or in a giant push, but it can help you in the overall fight to get stronger. And you also have the naval. I think the naval is also clearly weaker than other super units, except maybe the crab. But as an addition to the real super unit that is a fire dragon, I think it makes a quite nice addition. And overall, I think the fire dragon is, or the dragons in general, are a strong unit. Like, even for super units, they are very strong. But you just have to be very careful about the gameplay. And basically, if you play a dragon, just try to stay out of reach of enemies and only use it to like clear the path for your other units. I think that's a general idea.